Governor Patterson.
Upon information, there is an heroic pilot who saved himself and approximately 154 other passengers this afternoon. We've had a miracle on 34th Street. I believe now we've had a miracle in the Hudson. This was potentially a very tragic...
All right, you're listening to Governor David Patterson in New York as he talks about the situation there. We do want to kind of bring you up to date on this and give you the basics of what happened. U.S. Airways flight from New York to Charlotte down in the Hudson River in New York. The Airbus 320 went down at about 3:30 with 148 passengers. Michelle Franzen from NBC is in New York right now.
Good evening. Federal aviation investigators are en route to find out the exact cause of this crash, even though the pilot as well as government agencies preliminarily think that it was a flock of geese that may have caused the engines to go out on this plane. We want to show you a live picture at this hour. That plane has floated down and is now resting against one of the piers in lower Manhattan at this hour. All passengers and crew members off safely. New York's mayor is holding a press conference right now. He says many of those passengers were picked up in a concerted effort by New York waterway boats, a tour group boat, which is a Circle Line boat, as well as NYPD and FDNY boats that were quick thinking. And certainly there will be many stories coming out of this amazing day. A bold crash landing into Manhattan's Hudson River and stories of miraculous rescues of passengers on board.
They were standing on the wings, and then there are two life rafts that they were all filled up.
U.S. Air Flight 1549 went down into the Hudson River shortly after takeoff from New York's LaGuardia Airport.
I was sitting in 22A, so the left engine just blew. Fire flames coming out of it, and I was looking right at it because I was sitting right there. And it just started smelling a lot like gasoline.
Authorities say all passengers and crew members were able to exit the plane safely in less than 2 minutes. Authorities say the Airbus 320 bound for Charlotte, North Carolina, was airborne for less than 3 minutes when the pilot radioed in, saying the plane had hit a flock of geese and 2 engines were disabled.
The pilot said, "You guys got to brace for a hard impact." And that's when everyone started, to be honest, saying prayers and looked over the water, and we thought we had a chance because, you know, there was some water. And got to give it to the pilot, man. He made a hell of a landing.
Witnesses along Manhattan's west side say they saw the plane go down hard. With water temperatures in the 30s, rescue boats and ferries raced to help passengers escape. Many are crediting the pilot for the controlled crash landing that spared the lives of all on board, as well as residents of the densely populated New York City. And certainly we are hearing more and more stories coming out about that. The NTSB again en route. They will have much to work with. As you could see, the plane remained intact even though it crash landed into that river. Right now at this hour it sits in Battery Park City at the lower tip of Manhattan. That is where investigators will be looking at that plane, trying to find more answers. I'm Michelle Franzen in New York. Now back to you.
Michelle, a question for you here from Charlotte. Obviously, that flight took off from LaGuardia on its way to Charlotte, so we have immense concern here in this city about those passengers. Mayor Michael Bloomberg mentioned a moment ago that a few of those passengers have been taken to the hospital. He mentioned a few in stable condition. Any updates on how those that were taken to the hospital are doing now?
You know, the passengers we're told are at various hospitals in this location. There were about a dozen passengers being treated at a nearby pier where they had set up sort of a triage center, and some of them are being treated for minor injuries. We are told that no reports right now of what they would determine as serious or blood injuries, but also they're looking at impact injuries as well as some of those passengers just being treated for being traumatized by the incident itself. Now also U.S. Air has set up a location for families with people in this area that they can go to and also receive some help and if they're concerned as well. But at this hour, again, some of the patients at various hospitals throughout New Jersey and New York across the river there being treated for what we are told are minor injuries. No reports so far of serious injuries.
And that is the amazing part of the story. Michelle Franzen live for us in Manhattan tonight. Michelle, thank you.
We have confirmed several members of the Bank of America transition team were on this flight. Bank of America issued this statement. We are in the process of confirming their whereabouts. As you look at these dramatic pictures of the rescue, once again, the FAA says all of the passengers have been accounted for and are alive. The FAA says the pilot kept the doors closed for as long as he could, and that kept the plane from going under. One survivor spoke just a short time ago.
We were flying out from LaGuardia to Charlotte, and about 3 or 4 minutes into the flight, I was sitting in 22A, so the left engine just blew. Fire, flames coming out of it, and I was looking right at it because I was sitting right there, and it just started smelling a lot like gasoline. And a couple minutes after that, the pilot said, "You guys got to brace for a hard impact." And that's when everyone started, to be honest, saying prayers and looked over the water, and we thought we had a chance because, you know, there was some water. And got to give it to the pilot, man. He made a hell of a landing. At first, chaos, but everyone was kind of orderly, man. You know, after a while, I just kept saying, relax, relax. Women and children first, and then it just started filling with water quick.
Well, the number has been set up for families with loved ones on board. That number is 1-800-679-8215. Again, 1-800-679-8215. If you miss this number, you can see it continually scrolling on the bottom of our screen during our newscast.
As we mentioned, that plane was bound for Charlotte Douglas Airport. We were standing by for a news conference at the airport here. We do want to tell you that cameras are not allowed for the news conference. We're going to attempt to bring you that by cell phone. That should be coming up in just a couple of minutes, so stand by for that.
Yeah, now it's 6:06 here, Dave. When we were out here earlier watching this happen, as you look at that live picture at Charlotte Douglas Airport where we're waiting that news conference, our chief meteorologist, Brad Panovich, was telling us that the water there in the Hudson River is terribly cold, Brad. And one of the concerns, obviously, to get to those people as soon as possible was hypothermia.
Yeah, the air temperature was only in the low 20s, but as you mentioned, Bobby, the water temperature was barely above freezing, just enough to keep it open water. Current temperatures up in the New York area, the tri-state area, in the low 20s and upper teens. That same Arctic air mass that's invaded the southeast is affecting them as well. But look at the wind chills. These are the wind chills. 9-degree wind chill over there on the New Jersey side of the Hudson, right near the river, about a 10-degree wind chill. 11 as you head over towards Long Island, east of Manhattan. But in the water temperatures upstream near Yonkers, about 33, 32 degrees. You get closer to New York Harbor, they're around 34, 35. So very cold water in there, and hypothermia was the big concern. Coming up, we're going to talk about this Arctic air mass, how the impacts on us are going to be felt over the next 24 hours. We have some of the coldest weather you've seen in a long time. Those details in your complete first warn forecast in just a couple of minutes, guys.
All right, thank you, Brad. And as you know, Flight 1549 was headed from LaGuardia to Charlotte Douglas International Airport. So lots of stories coming out of the airport. Michelle Bowden joins us live now, and she's been joining us live for about an hour and a half now. And Michelle, have you talked to and found any passengers or people who are waiting for passengers flying in from New York?
We have, interestingly enough, we've not run into that many passengers. It may have something to do with the fact that the plane crashed shortly after takeoff. If we've been reporting all afternoon, it was just in the air for about 3 minutes, and that may have something to do with people starting to hear about it. We did run into one gentleman, though, who actually got a text message. Some of his friends thought he might be on the plane. It turned out he was here waiting for his co-worker who was on the plane. So he still, when we had talked to him earlier this afternoon, he still hadn't heard anything from his co-worker. We're hoping at this point he's one of the people that's okay. Obviously, you've been saying everyone did get off that plane. We also had a chance to talk with one woman who was waiting in the cell phone lot for her boyfriend who was coming in from New York. Someone stopped her and said, "Have you heard from him? Is he okay?" It turns out he was on another flight, and she did hear from him just moments later. But a lot of emotion these people are going through as they're hearing, and you can only imagine other loved ones and co-workers will be going through similar emotions. We can tell you that flight was supposed to get here at about 5:15 this afternoon. There was a news conference scheduled to start 5:45, and I understand, I'm just getting word that that news conference is just getting underway. We have 2 reporters upstairs, so we will, of course, bring you the latest information just as soon as we get it. We can also tell you that the U.S. Airways CEO said they were preparing to release that passenger list. At this point, we do understand that there are about 150 passengers on board. We, of course, at this point, don't know how many of them are from the Charlotte area. Charlotte, of course, is a place that many people fly through onto other destinations, so we don't know how many are from the Charlotte area. We have been able, though, through our newsroom, been able to confirm there was a Bank of America transition team on board. So no doubt as the evening goes on, we'll hear more of those relationships of people on board. And as you heard that other gentleman earlier in the newscast saying he was waiting for a coworker. So we're going to continue to stay at the airport and, of course, bring you the latest from that news conference. Again, we've got 2 reporters inside. We'll let you know just as soon as that news conference wraps up. That's the latest from the airport. Reporting live now with our mobile newsroom, Michelle Bowden, News Channel 36.
Okay, Michelle, thank you for that update there from the airport. One thing to mention, where that news conference is happening, we can't actually get cameras in there, so we'll attempt to get information to you as soon as we get some here. Well, when this happened this afternoon, one of the first ways the information was transmitted was on the World Wide Web. In this day and age we live in with all this technology, some of the first pictures came through the website Twitter and others. Let's check in now with reporter Stuart Watson live in our newsroom. Stuart, you've been monitoring the web as we get more information about what happened.
I've got some data here I've just pulled up, Bobby, but in the meantime, we'll show you the photo that we pulled up through a website called Twitter. This was taken from a cell phone from a man named Janice Crumbs, a man from Sarasota, Florida, who's an entrepreneur who took it. He was on one of those ferries that was swarming. I was just on the phone with a friend of mine who emailed me and called. She used to work for Time magazine. She said, this is a miracle. And everyone, our feedback, our viewer feedback, crediting the pilot. This woman who was on the banks of the Hudson River watching the rescue said the ferry sprung immediately into action. She saw boats swarming to the scene. We saw a guy we got in touch with through Twitter, through the website Twitter, those instantaneous messages of 140 characters each. And he said that he saw from his view of the Hudson, there from Manhattan, he saw the boat swarming to the scene, a flood of lights. We've got some information from you as well. This from a website referred to us called Flight Aware. It's a live flight tracker, and it shows the actual latitude, longitude, speed, and altitude of the flight at the time of the... And here's what you can see. I know you can't see these numbers, but I'll read them to you. At 3:26, flight at 1,800 feet. 3:27, 2,000 feet. It's on the on the rise. 3:27, less than 30 seconds later, another 400 feet up. Then, within 30 seconds, at 3:28, the flight at 2,000 feet. So within 30 seconds, between 3:27 p.m., 3:28 Eastern Time Zone, the flight drops 1,200 feet. About that time, that's what you heard the NBC reporter say, that they radioed in to say that they had struck some birds. The flight continues to descend with a momentary increase at 3:29 to 1,300 feet, then at 3:31 at 300 feet. This is right on the deck above the Hudson River at 153 knots. This pilot was ditching it at this time. I understand I have my colleague Mark Boone live on the phone right now. We're going to pitch to him. Mark?
All right. Well, we're having some audio problems there with Mark Boone, but we'll get back to him shortly. Meantime, we mentioned that a Bank of America transition team was apparently on that flight that was coming from LaGuardia to Charlotte that went down to the Hudson there. Let's check in with Mario Roldan. He is standing by. He's been talking to some Bank of America employees. Mario, what do you have for us?
Well, we are live in the heart of Charlotte's financial district, right next to the Bank of America corporate headquarters. Now, as you were saying, I spoke to some Bank of America employees. A lot of sad faces out here. Everyone's paying close attention to this story. Let's listen to what some of those employees had to say.
Well, I just hope that everyone's safe, concerned for their safety, but it seems like everyone got off okay, so that's good.
I would say, just stay strong and keep believing that they'll be all right.
Obviously worried about it. I hope that they're all okay.
What would you say to the family of some of your colleagues who may have been on that plane?
Just that we're thinking about them and hope that everything is all right.
And I asked some employees how much information they got from Bank of America. All they could tell me is really that what they told us is all they knew, and others just refused to answer that question. Again, obviously they are concerned up here. As you can see, some Bank of America employees still exiting here in Uptown from this Bank of America tower. Again, I saw a lot of gloomy faces, a lot of concern from some employees out here. They know that the good news is that those employees apparently got out of that plane alive. We do not know the condition, the health condition of their fellow employees. So, of course, right now they are concerned about that. But we're going to stay here with our mobile newsroom next to the Bank of America Tower. With the mobile newsroom, Mario Roldan, News Channel 36.
And we should point out there were 146 passengers on that plane, 5 crew members. One of those passengers, an infant, but apparently everybody has gotten out alive.
And Mayor Bloomberg earlier said, and if Mario, you can still hear us, tell those people out there that he said that, they were taken to different hospitals, but most of them were in at least stable condition.
Yeah, that's the important part there.
Mayor Bloomberg mentioned that he talked to Mayor Pat McCrory here as well, and had a good conversation, and was able to make light of it to a certain extent, to say that's not the normal way that people arrive in New York, which it's fortunate that he can joke a bit about it, but certainly a terrifying situation for anybody on board that plane.
Yeah, and it sounded like Mayor Bloomberg said that, obviously he had talked to Charlotte Mayor Pat McCrory, and that the mayor wanted to talk to Mayor Bloomberg to thank him for the response. And something earlier, as we were watching NBC's coverage before we went local here with News Channel 36's coverage, is that they showed some video earlier of the crews responding to this scene, and it was something they had not seen since 9/11. That the crews were there within seconds, and that is one of the reasons why we have such a wonderful story to tell tonight. It's so bad that this happened, but the fact that those people were able to get off is just amazing.
And as we look at some of these amazing pictures, earlier we got some of our most incredible information from U.S. Airways retired pilot Captain J.F. Joseph, and here's what he said to us earlier.
In all types of flying, birds do present a threat, and particularly at the lower altitudes, flocks of birds have the capacity to what we call FOD, an engine foreign object debris, and actually shut an engine down by blocking airflow or disturbing the airflow inside the engine and causing the flame patterns for the engine to continue to run. And inevitably, something like this at low altitudes with a lot of birds could be catastrophic, and that may very well be the case.
Yeah, in addition, it's the problem is a shortened runway there at LaGuardia, and it's tough. I mean, if there are any problems at all, that is a short runway, and it causes problems for pilots trying to take off from there.
Right, and he was actually, we should put that in context. We had asked him about birds because our first reports were saying, and they still are saying, that it sounds like and it looks like that the pilot had hit a couple of birds, and that was the first thing that was radioed into air traffic control.
We should also point out that Captain Joseph flew out of Charlotte for 20 years with U.S. Airways, and he was an instructor for these A320 Airbus jets, the one that landed in the Hudson. So he knows what he's talking about. He knows the plane, and he knows the airport in particular.
Some amazing insight from him. As I listened to him earlier, one thing that was interesting, it appeared that when this plane took off at LaGuardia, and for those of us who've flown in there, you do realize that when you're landing there, especially, you realize how it really is right on the water, is that this pilot apparently saw another runway, and this came from NBC News. They confirmed this, that he was looking at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, which would have been the next closest, and that's apparently next to Giant Stadium. So he was looking at that and then quickly realized, obviously, that he could not get there.
New York, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and Captain Joseph had said, when we mentioned that, he said that that was a clear-cut sign that he was really feeling like he was in trouble. If he couldn't get back to LaGuardia or reroute the plane back to that runway, then he felt like it was going to be going down.
Yeah, New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg was praising the rescue operation there just a few minutes ago. Let's listen into what he had to say.
I did talk to the mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, where the plane was going, Pat McCrory. He said we met a couple times, and I offered said the governor and I will buy him a drink the next time he comes to New York, but he called to say thank you very much for treating all the people who are going to Charlotte or live in Charlotte. Every report the governor got, they were just over the top with the kind of hospitality that we showed. I pointed out this is not normally the way people arrive in New York City, but nevertheless, as long as they're all got on safely.
One of the other things that Mayor Bloomberg said during that news conference is that pilot made a masterful landing. That is something we wrote down as we were listening to that. Now, another news conference happening just a few moments ago at Charlotte Douglas International. Our reporter Mark Boone was in that news conference getting more information from U.S. Airways and from the airport. He joins us live now on the phone. Mark, what do they have to say?
Well, Bobby, we just heard from Terry Pope, who is the Director of Operations for U.S. Airways here at Charlotte Douglas. Both she and spokesperson Michelle Moore, a lady who we had on the news several times talking about airline businesses, both women visibly shaken, struggling to keep their composure as they made just a brief statement here at the podium in front of about, I'd say, 4 members of the media, both local and national folks here. The tidbits that did come out of what we just heard, 104 of the passengers who were on board that flight, 1549 from LaGuardia, their final destination was here at Charlotte Douglas. Now, those folks were either live here or were going to business throughout the Carolinas. We talked to a couple folks who were here for a trade show, that were meeting folks who were on board that flight, also going to the trade show. So 104 of those passengers had Charlotte as their final destination. The remaining, of course, planning on catching flights from Charlotte Douglas heading to other locations. Not a whole lot of other information coming from U.S. Airways. We know that some family members of people who were on board that flight are here at Charlotte Douglas in an undisclosed location, getting information from the airline, getting comfort from folks with the airline as well. We don't know how many of those folks are in that conference room, and the airline is not disclosing where exactly within the airport that location is. Obviously, an emotional time for employees of U.S. Airways as well. We have not learned anything about the flight crew, the airline not releasing that information either, whether it was a Charlotte-based flight crew or from another city. We're still working to get more details. A very brief, hastily called news conference here, and a very emotional spokesperson and the director of operations for the airline also fighting back tears as they talk about this incident here this afternoon that fortunately turned out as well as it did.
Mark Boone reporting live from the airport. Thank you, Mark. And if you have family members on that flight, or you think you had family members on that flight, the number to call to see if they are okay is 1-800-679-8215. Again, that number 1-800-679-8215. Flight 1549 is the flight number.
Well, a short time ago, U.S. Airways President Doug Parker spoke in Phoenix, the home base of U.S. Airways, and News Channel 36 reporter Natalie Dick live in the newsroom now with what Parker had to say. Natalie?
Parker took the podium about an hour and a half after the accident happened, speaking for really just a few moments before he himself was getting on a plane to head to the scene in New York. Parker confirmed that all 150 passengers are accounted for. We know that now, but didn't give any specifics on the injuries. That still seems to be one of the unknowns. He also refused to say if, in fact, the plane lost engine power after colliding with birds, as we have heard reported so often.
It's premature to speculate about the cause of this accident. Out of respect for those affected, we would ask that you also resist the temptation to speculate. The National Transportation Safety Board will conduct a thorough investigation to determine the probable cause with our complete support and the support of many others.
And Parker said that U.S. Airways has a care team in place to help the passengers reunite with their families. We've given you that telephone number if you'd like to find out more information. It is across the screen. Here it is again, 1-800-679-8215. And I think it's important to urge that you should only call that number if you have a family member, someone you are still trying to contact and you believe that they were in fact on that flight. You would imagine that Doug Parker, once he gets to New York, is going to be out there on the scene, and I would think that he might be able to talk with the pilot, because obviously tonight that is the one person that so many people are still hoping to find out who it was. We've seen so many emails here at the station wondering and asking, is it somebody that's based right here out of Charlotte? Reporting from the newsroom, I'm Natalie Dick. Back to you.
And we were just talking here, Mayor Bloomberg said he already talked to that pilot, and pilot walked up and down the plane to make sure everybody was out. 104 passengers, again, just to repeat, 104 passengers on that aircraft. Their final destination was Charlotte, so we know a lot of stories are going to come out when those folks do return, and we'll certainly welcome them home.
I'd like to hear also from the flight attendants who had to, keep everybody calm, and just what a top-notch operation, the way that they got everybody out safely.
I'm sure it was a case of once they realized that the plane was in fact floating, because that was the important part here. As we talk about this, that plane was loaded down with luggage. That plane was loaded down with fuel because it had just taken off. And the fact that when you see in those earlier pictures, this is a live look now as crews try to figure out, probably at this point, how they're going to pull that out of the Hudson River and get it as safely as possible in one piece to a place where they can check it. But this is the image we're talking about, where, as we talked about with the captain, Joseph, talking about the landing, and then also with the witness who saw this in New York, that the plane made a belly landing there in the Hudson River, and that may have allowed it to stay above water. And then the crew opened those doors there at the front. And you have to think that that was such a, obviously they're trained in this. They know what to do, such a smart thing to do so that they could get out of those doors and get out safely. And that, again, as Dave just said, Mayor Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York City, talked to the pilot, and that pilot who made such a masterful landing then walked the plane twice to make sure that everyone was off.
And also at the news conference, Governor Patterson from New York got up and spoke at the podium. We've got some sound of what he had to say.
There is an heroic pilot who saved himself and approximately 154 other passengers this afternoon. We've had a miracle on 34th Street. I believe now we've had a miracle in the Hudson.
Well, what a,
well said.
What a quote there. Yeah. And right now you're looking at the live pictures from the Hudson. And what's taking place right now, U.S. Airways dispatches a safety department to the scene there, as well as the NTSB from Washington, D.C. They dispatch a group of people there, a large group of people. What they'll do is they will preserve the evidence, which is what they're doing right now. And you can see some of the buoys out there as well, trying to keep that evidence out of the water. They will take photographs before anything is moved. Then they will remove the wreckage and kind of reconstruct the plane itself there, but it's pretty well intact, which is kind of an amazing thing. But they will reconstruct what happened, try to determine. Initial reports say that this might have been birds, but again, you know, the emphasis here is it is really too early to tell. It'll take you know, probably weeks and months before they determine this, and in some cases, it's taken over a year for them to determine this.
Absolutely. And right now we have some new video of passengers as they first arrived on dry land, and you can see all of them with their life jackets on. And what Bobby and I were talking about when we were first out here, when this was first happening, is just how to see people, you know, business flyers, vacation flyers. This is the woman I was talking about earlier. She gets off, she gets onto the ferry, and she gives the rescue crews from the New York Fire Department a big smile and a big thumbs up, and
so
just bursts into tears.
Yeah, maybe some of you in Charlotte recognize some of these folks right here, and if you do, certainly give us a call. We'd like to talk to you. But it's an amazing scene there. It could have been just an awful, awful scene. Scary for these folks, but these folks are alive, and that's the important part.
That is the important part. Obviously, this is the big story today. Back now to our breaking news. New information just coming in. Flight 1549 landing in the Hudson River. We now know 150 passengers aboard, 5 crew members, and new information that 78 patients were treated by medic, 35 people rescued from the cold water. A lot of those people now at the hospital. This is video of them getting to the shore.
We'll be covering this all evening long. Of course, NBC Nightly News is coming up next with the latest, and you continue to watch this all evening long, 24 hours a day on WCNC.com.